Alrighty, we are recording. Welcome everyone to the San Diego Patriots podcast. I'm your host Lee. This is episode 29, and I'm sitting here with my new friend, Mr. James Brown. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you for the invite, man.
Of course. Yeah, we got connected through our mutual friend, Mr. Zach Giannino.
Yeah. Oh, Zach's great.
Yeah, and you mentioned you've known him for what, a year now, so
Yeah.
or
Yeah, about a year, just before I started getting involved in running for office.
yeah, and then so that was one of the main things that I wanted to chat with you about, and I mean especially right now, it's election coming up in November.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mind like kind of summarizing like what you're running for, what you're all about, and then we'll just kind of jump into it.
Yeah, so I'm running for the California State Assembly. I'm in District 77. So my area is Coronado to Carlsbad along the coast.
Gotcha.
So it's been a very interesting ride. I won my primaries, got a little over 49,000, almost 50,000 votes,
Wow.
which was great. Yeah, and I just am a regular person. I like to say I'm an ordinary person with extraordinary ambition
Yeah.
that just wants to make a difference. So not like I was invited to the table. I wasn't propelled to come here by any groups. I just, regular person like yourself, just looked up the guidelines of what you had to do to get onto the ballot, knocked on all the doors I had to get the nominations, and next thing you know, I got the nomination and I was on the ballot and I won the primaries. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so when did you decide that you wanted to run? Like, was that late last year or?
So that's a great question. I've always had an idea of running in the sense that even when I was younger, I was like about 15, 16. I even told my brothers, I was like, hey, one day I want to have a holiday named after me. And I always had big dreams like that. And they're like, well, what do you have to do for that? And that's where it all started. And I say that because then at that point, I remember I'm going to live my life every day as if I'm running for president. That means no skeletons in my closet, nothing anybody has on me. I'm just working hard, just trying to be a great American, have a great American story,
Yeah.
And so it started off there. So I always had a general idea of what I wanted to do. But then I would say to actually make it a reality started about last year, where I was looking at the state of our politics, the state of our government, and you start to see things changing. And it's like, whoa, like I'm not cool with how things are going. But instead of complaining and doing nothing about it, I'm going to try to get involved and to do something. And that's what happened, one thing after the other, and I'm on the ballot. Now I'm on the November 5th ballot.
Yeah. And what is a state assembly, right? Because I know that there's different districts, I imagine, in every county, or is it on a state level?
So it's almost like a county in a way, because there's 80 districts. And so each one has their own areas that they're running.
Like geographical zip code,
Correct.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. And so what they do specifically is they write the laws and these bills that become laws. And so I'd be spending a lot of time going to Sacramento and working with a lot of the lawmakers over there. So it's basically like a Congress in a way, because I'm working with the legislators to come up with these laws that are going to impact my community and other communities around.
Yeah. So you offer basically a voice, you communicate with the people, and then offer a voice that goes to the folks that are actually writing the laws that would get implemented in this area.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, so what made you want to run for that? Like, did you consider any other positions you could run for, and what made you settle on
Yes.
the state assembly?
I'm glad that you said that. So I did consider the traditional route. A lot of people do, go to your little treasurer or work your way up from school board or something, and then work your way from there to city council and work your way up. I thought about that, but also I was just very ambitious, trying to go to the top if I could. And honestly, I would have ran for House of Representatives, but that's going against Scott Peters, and the man's got hundreds of millions of dollars. So there's no way I could even
Uphill battle.
Yeah,
Huh?
that's going up a mountain with no gear. I figured like state assembly would probably be a little bit lower of a step, but it would still be right there. So that's how I figured for state assembly. But I also wanted to have a meaningful impact aside from just filling potholes or making sure streetlights are good. I wanted to make laws so that we can have like the right laws on the books to help our country. Really, I'm all for hardcore like American. That's it. Like I look at it as this is our country. Doesn't matter what political spectrum you're on. We're all Americans. If the boat sinks from one end or the other, we're all gonna drown. That's how I look at it. And so with that, it seemed to me at least like a lot of our leaders didn't really have our interest. They only had their own self-interest, and they put profits over people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think we need to change. And honestly, I do see myself having a long career into this, but initially getting in, it wasn't even for that reason. It was to get in, do the right things, make it harder for people to be corrupt in our government, and then if I had to, just leave and then go make music or something about it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the initial plan. But honestly, like if the people want to keep me in for the long term, then I'll stick around as long as I could. You know, my goal is to just help people.
Yeah. I mean, and you're a young guy, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to local office. I mean, you're a young guy. There's, if you like it, you can continue doing it. But I think what's nice is, like you said, kind of the people who have been running things may not have been doing the greatest job. Sometimes it takes a new perspective to come in, and oftentimes kind of young, hungry energy where you're less jaded, let's say, right? You're coming in with that kind of common sense thinking and trying to actually make an impact, for the people.
Absolutely. I think this too, like we've had people that are in office for so long. It's like the oldest government in our history. And if you want things to change, you got to get new people in here. Right now we're in $35 trillion of debt, which that's really going to impact the younger people, our kids, our grandkids.
Yeah.
That's
us when we're old.
Us, yes. And so with that, that's what I look at. Like, this is not the right path. I remember there was a speech that somebody had, I think it was Bill Clinton, that said, about our debt, because I think that he did get us out of debt, but then something about like, what are we going to do about all of this like down the line? He's like, oh, we'll let the future take care of it. And I feel like that's what a lot of these older politicians are like. They're like, oh, we'll let the future take care of that. We're going to run up the bill now and let them worry about it because they're not going to be alive to see it. And that's what I'm worried about. And that's why we need to get more younger people involved, because this is our country. This is our futures that we're dealing with, and it's great that we have a lot of older people that are running because we can learn from older people. But at the same time, you need to give us the reins because this is our realities that are being affected here. Yeah. And, when the baby boomers die off, we're going to have to inherit everything that they left behind. And it seems like right now, look at on all spectrums, the economy, the environment, there's so many different things that are just in a mess right now that we have to be able to take control of our futures and our realities right now. I think that right now is like the best time to do it.
Yeah, and that's really one of the human stories as well, is when individual people prioritize the immediate gratification and disregard the long run. Yeah. Things start to get ugly. And I don't care if we're talking about health, right? If I eat a bunch of junk food right now, it feels awesome in the moment, but then I'm going to be overweight and unhealthy later, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing with spending with, money, right? It's like if we're just thinking about, how can I benefit myself today? Who cares about 10 years from now? Sure, you can have your cake and eat it too in the moment, but then later someone's going to experience the consequences, and you may be out of office or dead by then, if you're kind of an older person dictating these policies, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the scary part. And I've been in finance since I was 18 and right now I'm in my
sales
30s.
Background.
Yeah, sales.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my 30s now, and it really worries me because I feel like a lot of people can't really comprehend or wrap their head around exact magnitude of what we're dealing with. Like 35 trillion. It's like this. If you had a money printer that printed you $1 a second, to get to $1 million, it'd take about a week. Do you know how long it takes you to get to $1 billion? About 30 years. Yeah. And to get to $1 trillion, over 3,000 years. That's for 1 trillion. Times that by 35. That's crazy. And this is, remember, like I said, a money printer printing you $1 a second. Yeah. So like we're in a huge crisis that it's almost like you're falling asleep because it's like you're not paying attention to it, because how could people really see the money's like numbers somewhere, right? But in reality, this is very serious. Yeah. And 35 trillion is nothing to laugh at, and so it's something that we have to address, and we have to really be more responsible. I feel like even in California alone, in the last 5 years, they spent $24.5 billion on homelessness and no accountability.
And it's gotten worse.
Yeah, right. Homelessness got worse. Where'd the money go? And what are they doing? Nothing. And we need to have accountability. I feel like that word right there is like it's like a boogeyman to people in the government. Yeah. It's like
it's their enemy.
Yeah, accountability. And honestly, it's not a bad thing. Like if I win, I want people to make me accountable for things I say, for things I do, because that's how you know what you're doing. Like I used to play sports teams, right? You have to have accountability on your team. Everybody has to do their part. Even in sales, when you're working with teams, everybody has to do their part.
Yeah. Or else the money doesn't come in.
Exactly. So we got to have the accountability when it comes down to it, especially with our government. And I feel like that's not happening right now. And so with people spending without accountability, then that's how you get yourself into a hole like this.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple change that could be done and it'll fix the situation. But the people that have the power right now don't want that.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And that is one of the ongoing themes, I think, both in issues in the government. I'll cut that out later. Yeah, issues in the government or, issues in culture and how we deal with one another, declining marriage rates, all that type of stuff. Like accountability, I think, in the Western world, we're getting worse at and worldwide. But that's an important topic. So in addition to accountability, like what would you say specific to District 77, local in San Diego, like, give us the top 3 to 5 issues you think people should have on their radar, and then kind of your perspective on what we can do about it.
Yes. Well, for sure, we got to handle this homelessness issue. That's one. And I'll go into them. First, I'll tell you them and then go into them. So homelessness, we got to have safer neighborhoods. And that includes our homes and our businesses, because the whole Prop 47, and then we're trying to change it with Prop 36, which is good.
What was Prop 47?
Prop 47, it's basically, I summarize it where it's like they loosened some of the laws. So, for example, the big thing that I harp on, it's the theft. So you could steal up to $950 worth of items, and you could do it today, tomorrow, the day after, and keep doing it every day because it's under 1,000. It is just a
slap
misdemeanor.
On the wrist.
Yeah, it's not a felony. And so stuff like that is very important to understand, because if you're a business owner, say you own a small business, which is terrible, but I saw this happen in Old Town. A lady was selling blankets. A guy comes in, takes as many blankets as he could, walks right out. Can't do anything about it. But these blankets aren't going for thousands of dollars. They're regular blankets, but they're mostly for tourists. But this keeps this lady's business up, right? So steals all the blankets. And then all of a sudden it's like, the business owner's sitting there like, this is my livelihood. You just came and took everything. And it's not like it's a Walmart or Target where they already have the budget set aside for people stealing, but that it incentivizes this petty theft. People feel more empowered to go and steal. There's actual organized thefts. You've seen the smash and grabs and stuff like that going on.
Hurts everyone, especially the small businesses, because they are higher risk and they have less budget.
Yes. And so that's the second one. The third one I really care about is the environment, especially in District 77, because it's along the coastline. Some of the best places, you got the Cove, you have like the beaches in Carlsbad, Del Mar, all these, it's all beaches, and so we have to be able to protect our environment. And it's funny, I'm actually a judge on the Environmental Film Festival, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of what's on the world stage as far as how bad our environment is. But it all starts local. You want to reach the world, you got to touch your street first. And so I look at it like on a local level, if we take more care of our environments, our communities, then that could even be more contagious and spread. So the environment for sure, and also even military. My father, my grandfather, uncles, cousins, I have so many people that's in the military that I think that we really need to do more to take care of them. I know that there's a lot of great benefits that they have out there, and I've been going to a lot of their breakfast events, talking to them and really understanding the things that they want and things that they need. But I think that our military, we're the strongest military in the world. They make all the ultimate sacrifices for us. I think that we can make sacrifices for them. A lot of veterans, when they come back, get PTSD. There's even veterans that go homeless. And these are people that made the ultimate sacrifice for us. So I feel like we need to take care of our veterans as well. And those are just a few ones that I like to harp on when it comes down to it. And then there's other smaller ones. I remember we talked earlier, hills I'm willing to fight for, hills I'm willing to die on. Another one is for the children. I'm really big on it. Everything is a central theme, right? Everything's around the youth in the future and being able to preserve and protect our country for the future. So one thing that's really big is SB 1414, where right now it's a misdemeanor to solicit a child for sex, and they're trying to make it a felony. And I'm just wondering, why is it not already a felony? And I actually got to sit and listen to the arguments for and against it, I can't even believe people are arguing against it, because it just says, oh, this is going to unfairly target certain communities. But you're telling me that these communities are targeting children more. So it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. The whole point is to protect our kids.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's not enough being done to protect them. So that's why, that's something that's very big for me. But I realized it's not big for everybody else. I'm not saying everybody, but for a lot of people, they really don't see that as a big issue.
Yeah.
Which kind of it's very alarming. But honestly, I did have some experience working with some groups that they would actually catch these predators trying to lure children online, and I noticed there's a lot of them, and they're not registered. These are just regular people, and they got caught. But the alarming thing about it is that there's so many of them, and they're all over the place. It doesn't matter what state you're in.
Yeah, and especially I imagine that has grown after year 2000, 2001 or so, because hey, we have the internet now.
Yeah.
The internet now, while it's great and has advantages in many ways, there's also a dark side to the internet. Mm-hmm. Not only all the aggressive pornography that's available to kids who have access to iPhones, but also predators, whether we're talking about like modern day sextortion. I know like Dr. Phil had a whole segment on sextortion where, young, predators will target young men, between 12 to 16, talk them, pretend that they're a young girl, talk to them, hey, send me a naked picture of yourself. They send them a naked picture of themselves, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm not actually a young girl. I'm going to distribute this picture to all of your friends and your parents and all this stuff unless you get me $500 or more. Mm-hmm. And either kids go steal from their parents to pay it, or they freaking kill themselves. Yeah. And it's a big issue happening right now. And that's not even aside from folks who are actually meeting up with children. Yeah. Like I imagine that was kind of the efforts that you were working on, right?
Yeah. And that's huge. That's a whole nother thing. Yeah. And that's even different from what's going on. I saw this movie, Sound of Freedom. I don't know if you've seen it.
I didn't see it yet, but I know I heard about it and know a little bit about the story in real life.
It's actually crazy because they did part of the film at the San Diego border right here by TJ, and a lot of trafficking happens through that border. And trafficking itself is way different than people meeting up with kids like that, because trafficking is business. Mm-hmm. And that's like in the movie, they're like, you could sell a drug one time, but you sell a person 10 times
a day
for 20 years. And that's crazy. And there's whole organizations. That's a whole deep rabbit hole that people could go down and
they honestly, should, in my view, because you care a lot about the children, even though a lot of folks out there, in my view, I think a lot of people care about children, of course, including myself. But I think a lot of people out there don't know the extent to how much children are being targeted right now.
Yes. I feel like if more people knew the extent of which it was happening, mm-hmm. every little thing, you wouldn't let it slide. Because it's crazy how bad it really is, but it's not being pushed mainstream. It's all like underground. Yeah. And it's really sad because there's over 100,000, a couple 100,000 missing children every year. Yeah. And
do you think that's because, so I know like a lot of the issues we see today, they get, I don't want to directly say they get covered up by the media, but in my view, and this is again my kind of uneducated perspective on it, right? So when we look at all the trafficking of drugs or children across the border, right? We all know that since Joe Biden came in, he kind of undid like Donald Trump's border security policies that allowed anyone to show up and say, hey, my life's in danger, let me in. They let him in, no questions asked. Of course, we want to help people who are in worse conditions, but money doesn't grow on trees. We cannot just let in everyone and open the border. So the problem is a lot of the folks, such as the Biden administration, in my view, their policies are the reason why the border's open and people are flooding through. So if you start to shed light on children being abducted, children being sex trafficked, fentanyl coming through in the bricks, that makes them look bad. So therefore, they don't want to share that on the media. I mean, am I right on that?
Oh, of course not. They won't want to show anything that makes them look bad. Yeah. It's the government. They're always going to try to cover things up. And so even just bringing that up, people are going to automatically shut it off, say, oh, yeah, well, we tried to pass something on the border and they didn't pass it. It's always point fingers. Yeah. Everybody wants to point fingers at someone else. And nobody wants to take the accountability. You see it? Back to the central theme. Somebody has to be the accountable one at the end of the day. You know, if things don't get passed, who could you point a finger at? That's why we have politicians, right? So you have somebody that's in charge you could point the finger at. But if even the politicians are saying, don't point your finger at me, point it at them, then what are we doing? We're just sitting here, everybody's blaming each other, and we're all going to sink and just keep blaming each other for it. We got to have somebody step up and do something.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big thing.
And what's unique to San Diego County compared to other places is we are on the border, right? And I believe right now, especially in the past 2 years, we are now the #1 spot for, illegal trafficking and all that stuff. And I know El Paso, Texas was huge on that a couple years ago. Then they finally started to crack down on it. Yeah. But guess what? We're the sanctuary state. So all the operations, if we think just put yourself in the shoes of the cartel, you're making over $1 billion trafficking humans instead of drugs through El Paso, cops start cracking down on it, just shift operations to California, right? This is a sanctuary state where no one gets in trouble for anything.
But here's the thing though. Now say your territory, your cartel, I don't know much about him, but if your territory is Texas, you come to California, I can imagine there's already people in California. So there's going to be a conflict now. If you want to, it's not as easy to just move your operations unless they're all connected. If your territory's there and you have people there, that's different. But I don't know. I just know that the logistics of it, they did start moving people down this way. And where the money is, these people that cross over, they pay a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
they're paying. This is their life savings to get over here.
Yeah, it'd be $5,000, $8,000 just to come through, and some, I believe, folks from China are paying north of $50,000. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I always say if I'm the cartel, it's so much less risky right now, given the current policies, to traffic humans. I mean, how crazy is that? Instead of a brick of cocaine, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy how they're incentivized to do this. And our country, I was telling you earlier, a friend of mine, he works at the border, he has these people that call them give-ups. Now, here's the thing. Anybody else that's not from Mexico that crosses our border through Mexico, they could come seeking asylum. Like, oh, hey, I'm here seeking asylum, running from my country. If you're from Mexico, they're going to send you right back. But anywhere else, because of the fact that you're not in your country, you're not even at your border country, they take them in, and then they give them all the resources. But the thing is, it's like, who's paying for this? Like you're saying, money doesn't just grow on trees. Who's paying for this? And then with the sanctuary cities, that gets me because then it's like, say they do commit crimes here. You can't just get rid of them, deport them because they're in a sanctuary city. So it's like, I understand the need to protect people, but I feel like that can be exploited when it comes down to it. And there's certain places like Santa Ana wants to give undocumented immigrants the right to vote, which bothers me. It gets me worried because I look at it like this. All right, their argument is no taxation without representation, and they're paying taxes and they should have a say in the government. But here's the thing, the taxes go to the roads that they're using, the street lights that they're using, traffic lights. They're using the things that they're benefiting with the tax dollars. But that doesn't equate to elected leaders. Because then who's to say Vladimir Putin were to send over 10,000 people, or Xi Jinping 10, 20,000 people, which are already coming over from these countries, right? And now they're listening to what their president over there is saying, right? And so now they can come in and influence our elections and then determine like what our government is going to do and how our government operates. I mean, already in New York, it was busted, like China had their own police.
When it comes to sanctuary states, right? So in my view, well intended by the folks who vote for it and believe in sanctuary states, unfortunately, it's something that the bad guys take advantage of and use to their own benefit for money, for power. And unfortunately, a lot of times it means they're distributing drugs or humans, which we don't want, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's really the dangerous part of it all, because we're incentivizing this. They're not afraid of the consequences. Yeah. And so if they're not afraid of the consequences and there's a lot of upside, a lot of benefit because they're getting paid from it, why not? And so that's where you start to see a lot of people that are starting to now come over here. But next thing you know, they're here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they're going to have kids. They're going to be so well blended in that you won't be able to tell. And it could kind of it's a gray area, because then it's like, where are people's loyalties at? Yeah. And so that's what gets me a little worried about, what's going on, because we're already in pretty crazy times where we have more mass shootings than days of the year. And so I just get worried about public safety in general of who's really coming over.
Yeah.
Because as mentioned when I talked to you about the give ups, the people that come over and just give themselves up, there's also a good amount of people that come over and don't give themselves up. They
Yeah.
come over, crash on the boats,
The known
jump off.
gotaways.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see them, you see it all over the news. It's in my district. They
Oh, yeah.
crash on the shore with the boats, jump off like 20, 30 people, run into different cars and scurry away.
Cars that are pre-planned to pick them up and know where they're at. Same thing with jet skis.
Yeah.
I mean, and I believe there was a point in time, I don't know the exact stats on it, but there was a point in time where we had at least one boat a week, bringing 10 to 12 people jammed on the boat. When they look and examine the boat, it's been kind of retrofitted to where they can have cargo, what's in the cargo, let alone, way more people than they need to. And sometimes they're even hanging American flags just so they don't, get caught. So
crazy.
it's wild. Yeah.
Crazy. So it's stuff like this where we have to wake up and pay attention to
Yeah.
and do something about this. I feel like what is currently being done, if there is something being done, we don't know about it.
Yeah.
They're not telling people. And so we have to let people, at least give people the confidence in knowing something's being done, because right now it seems like it's just lawlessness. Everything is just going on and nobody's doing anything and nobody's getting in trouble. So we got to do something about that.
Yeah. And oftentimes the consequences, a lot of them are immediate, but some of them we won't see for the next 10 to 20 years, because if these guys are bringing in operations, building, setting up shop, hey, 3-4 years down the road, maybe they're going to run into this problem or have a turf war with another folks, right? Yeah. And same thing with, like me personally as a San Diego citizen, I care a lot about, homelessness. I think is cruel on how our approach is to that. Military is something that makes us strong and I think is an absolutely fantastic resource for young men and women who can't afford to go to college, all that stuff. I could go on all day about both of those topics. The third one is the border. It's like we are literally at the hub of, Joe Biden's open border philosophy because again, we're in the sanctuary state. All the operations at the moment have shifted to San Diego County, East County, right, in Jacumba. And it's scary because, yes, we have cartel. We've always had cartel issues, not new to San Diego, but they've gotten a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Secondly, and at least in my view, I also get concerned about folks on like the known terrorist watch list who come through. With all the crazy shit going on in the Middle East right now, and, October 7th happening, you have half the world basically kind of supporting Hamas and celebrating and saying, gas the Jews. And, they always say Israel is the small devil or Satan and America is the big Satan. That's how they view us.
Yes.
So if they're emboldened to do something like that and they're actually getting away with it, while the border's wide open, why not send a couple thousand people in? And maybe they're planning something for later this year, or they're planning something 3 years from now so they can do it right. That scares the hell out of me.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
And the thing is like a lot of people want to look at like these innocent women and children that are crossing over, which I understand they're crossing over for their life, their safety. There's always going to be a few of those, but then there's also the few that don't want to have peace and they come with a different agenda. And that's where we have to be really strict on who we're allowing over. We have to know who's coming here.
Yeah.
We just can't just have open borders and let people come over like this. We got to have some sort of common sense leadership where it's like, all right, it just makes sense. Come on, let's all come together.
Yeah.
Too many people, I guess, are so on their side. I can't even say I guess because I know.
Yeah.
I remember there's times where I talk to people who are part of these big organizations that I'm not going to say because I don't want to put them out there like that. But I remember having hour-long conversations. We have great topics about whatever, the border, criminal justice reform, stuff like this. And everything is good. We're all on the same page up until like the very end where they're like, all right, so what party are you? And as soon as you tell them the party, that's it. Shut it off. Sorry, can't help you. It's bad look. It's bad optics, whatever it is. And I'm just like, wow, we just had a whole great conversation and we just came up with like plans and things that we could do. And
we're making
now
progress.
Shut off because of the party lines.
Yeah.
And we got to get rid of that mindset, have a whole new paradigm shift. It's not about the party that you're representing. The party is just a means to try to push, I guess, your ideas or whatever you think. But we're people. We're not the party itself.
Yeah.
We're capable of thinking different ways. You're not just one way of thinking. And obviously you're not going to agree with what everybody says 100%. You're not going to agree with anybody 100%. But if we could work with the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, however much we have in common, if we could at least build from there, have that common ground, and now we have something that we could work on and build from. You know, I know there's something in common. Worst case scenario, we're Americans. If that's the only thing we have in common, well then great, we'll build from there. But there is a place that we could build from, and I feel like we need to have somebody that can bring everybody together and at least start building something, because right now there's nothing going on. It's just a bunch of finger pointing and everybody's just like, sorry, we can't do this, can't do that. Bills are getting like shut down before you even get a chance, just because of the fact of who's promoting it.
Yeah.
They don't want
It's
your
tribal.
side to look good. It's very tribal.
Yeah.
And we got to get out of that mindset and into more inclusive, where we're working together and realize it's us against the world. Too many people, like, they want to support all these other countries, but a lot of these people from the countries don't like us. And we have to understand, like, yeah, we might think that we're the great beacon of hope in the world, but there's also an equal number of people that hate us, like deeply hate us. And that's where we have to be smart and understand, like, not everybody that's coming through the border is a friend. And I guess until we could get through with certain people that realize that, then we could say, all right, now we can start working here.
Yeah.
This is the common ground, you know?
Well, I like what you said, where, I mean, in reality, it shouldn't matter what your party is. Many of us should agree that we don't want murder on the streets. We don't want children being trafficked, right? And I think many people can agree, like, hey, immigration is good to a certain degree, right? Like, unmanaged, limitless, lawless immigration is not good.
Yeah.
Regulated immigration is in fact good. And I think that's usually where people, in my view, you know, if you're kind of talking to someone who considers himself more on the left or pro-Democrat or whatever, they kind of just shut the conversation down and say, oh, well, you're just racist because you don't want immigrants coming in. It's like, no, actually, you know, lucky me, my mom was a fucking immigrant, you know, she was an actual refugee who sought asylum. So I'm not going to sit here and be called, you know, racist or, you know, it's like my girlfriend's Mexican. I grew up with Mexicans. Like, I love the Mexican culture. And guess who gets impacted negatively when the borders open? The Mexican communities, right? And so I can go on all day about that. And one thing I wanted to, you know, dive a little deeper on. So you mentioned for yourself, you know, the kids is a big focus, right?
Yeah.
So aside from the border, because we could talk all day about, you know, the chaos happening in general, let alone to the kids with the open border, like what other aspects of local policy and kind of local San Diego nuances, you know, would you kind of emphasize, especially related to the kids?
Yeah, a great question. So when it comes down to it, in my role as state assembly, I look at the bills, I look at the laws. So there's a bill AB 1955. Right now, what it is, it's a bill that says the teachers don't have to tell the parents if their child wants to transition. So like if Billy goes to school, he wants to be called Sally at school, everybody at school could know about it, and parents don't necessarily know. And they use the argument in it's going to strengthen the relationship at home, because sometimes a kid might not want their parents to know that they're going through this transition. But here's my thing. It's like, if you're going to tell parents that your kid got into a fight at school, right, why would you not tell them this? Like, why are the parents going to be the last ones to find out? I think that could actually backfire negatively, because the parents are like, oh, my child wants to transition? I'm the last one to know about this? Like, how long have you guys known about this? Oh, the whole school year? So, you know, stuff like that. I get a little worried about how that's going to come across, especially with the families. But even more so, I'm always on the side of more freedoms, right? So I don't want the government to dictate how people run their households, right? And so with that, I would say, why not come up with simple solutions? Simple, keep it simple, right? So, okay, what about, here's my proposal. What about this? So for the parents that do or don't support it, whatever, let's say in the beginning of the year, as you're filling out your paperwork for your child to go to the school, why don't you have a checkbox and say, if your child wants to transition, do you want to know about it? Yes or no? Why do we have to pass a law to mandate teachers to do something? You know, it's something so simple. Give the people the freedom to make the choice themselves instead of forcing it on them.
Yeah.
Because now you got people like Elon Musk pulling out Chevron, all these people, because now they feel like they're powerless with their own kids. Because at the end of the day, are the kids yours or are they the government's? You know, if you don't take care of them, government's going to take them, right? So are they really yours in the beginning? Who knows, right? Now we're in that struggle. And that's the problem that I fear with a lot of having the government get too big, where it's like now they start to take away your freedoms bit by bit. And so I'm always, like I said, always going to be on the side of giving people freedoms, but we got to have common sense solutions. Like, what's so wrong with that? Like a checkbox. And if you feel like it's too much of a burden every year, all right, whatever, we'll check it. And then up until you want to change your mind, you let the school know, if anything,
Yeah.
or
If
something.
anything, like set the default. The default is the parents are prioritized over the school and
Yeah.
state, but you can opt out of that if you want, right?
And that way you don't have to make a law about it
Yeah.
to mandate it for teachers. At least you're giving the parents that power, that right. And so that's when it comes down to it, that's really big on, especially with the kids. I think that certain nuances like this are going to help us out overall as a country, because even these bills like this are very divisive, because like when you're saying now teachers aren't mandated, all right, you could call it mandated, forced to, whatever it is, like, are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? And then it's like, now can the parents even trust the schools that they're sending them to now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to trust the schools. I'd rather homeschool my kids because I don't know what they're teaching them. I graduated college. I'm in law school now. Like, I feel like I'm smart enough to teach them how to get prepared for the world, but not many parents would have the luxury of time to sit and teach their kids this stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, you got to think, what are parents? Like, parents are being put in a really tough position here.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's not right. And a lot of people vote for or against, but it's like, why not give them that choice? Why did whoever wrote the bill, why did they not even think about that option? Just give them the option instead of just saying, this is what you're going to do. That's what I worry about, especially just even the big scale of government, because over time, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? You're chipping away bit by bit at our freedoms, our rights, and eventually we're going to wake up and look at it and say, wow, we can't do this, can't do that, can't do this. And then next thing you know, it's like, what are we even doing? The government's controlling every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry about, because I always want to give people more freedoms. People, their freedoms.
It's the American philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we were built on. Like the founding fathers didn't say, I want someone to take care of me. They said, I want the opportunity to take care of myself and my family. And that independent spirit is what I want to spread across the country. I want more people to have that independent spirit. Like, every time we have a debt ceiling debate and we're talking about raising this debt ceiling, well, you're going to hold the whole country hostage because we're reaching that debt ceiling, and it's either we're going to default or we're going to have to raise the limit and raise that credit card number again.
Yeah.
And that's where it worries me, because I feel like people spend too loosely and they don't care about the consequences, because somebody else is going to take care of that down the line.
Yeah.
Who's going to step up?
Yeah, and I think especially on the parents versus state philosophy, like, fortunately we can look towards other countries who have done that and actually see the consequences to it, right? Like, every communist revolution in the last century started in very similar ways, right? You have your current regime who dictates what's right and what's wrong, regardless of what you think. They determine what's right or what's politically correct, which is, I always remind people, is initially a Soviet term. Like, it is a communist phenomena. But what they do is they target the children, right? And they tell the children that, hey, everything that your parents told you, everything that you think, maybe you're Christian, maybe you're Jewish, whatever, all of that stuff is actually wrong. That is what led to all this suffering and inequality you see throughout our society today. We, the state, are actually coming in and going to solve that, right? We will take us to the utopia. So Mr. 15-year-old, kid, like, no, we know what's best for you. And then what they do is they start to change the policies where, no, actually, the parents don't own the kids. The state owns them. The state knows what's best. They will determine what your kid thinks is right and wrong. You don't get that option to.
Yeah.
North Korea, China, Russia, right? All these places, Cambodia at the time, when they had their own communist revolution, same phenomena. So it's like, we can sit here and debate all day what's better. And I'm sure there's some situations where, of course, kid comes to school with a black eye. Yeah, he's probably getting beat at home. And that is something where maybe the state should have a little bit more rules in terms of what happens to the kid. But, a kid coming out as gay, a kid, coming out as trans, I'm not sure that should not give the power to the state over the parents in that scenario, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That should be something like a family thing that they take care of. And that's good. That's perfect how you said it like that, because that is the exact problem that we're having, is where the state says, we know what's good for you. We know what's best. And that's what I'm worried about. Like, for example, in Carlsbad, they just passed a bill that says you're not allowed to smoke in your own apartments in certain buildings. I'm like, wow, that you're telling me the government is telling you what to do in your own home. That should be between the tenant landlord, if anything.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have the government to tell you what you're doing in your house. And so, like I said, it's just going to chip away piece by piece before you realize that you don't have any rights. And so that's what that's what we're fighting against.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't want to try to demonize any side, any party, political spectrum, because in my opinion, they all got to go. I'd say get rid of everybody in our government and start fresh and get new people in, because so many people are corrupted. And I'm learning this now that I'm in. Like, really, you know who owns the politicians are the lobbyists. A lot of the politicians don't have freedom of speech.
Yeah.
They can't even think for themselves. Like, if they say the wrong thing, they lose all their donors. You know, they say something that's out of the script, then that's it for them. Their whole political careers are gone. And I'm learning this, and I'm a regular person coming in. So I feel like I'm a free man in a whole like prison system almost that's bought out. And with this whole Citizens United, what was a law that basically, it was a court case, and it was like the ending of it was basically like corporations are people now. And so, you know, we're a government of the people for the people, right? But these corporations are people. So now of the corporations, because there's no way one person could stand against a corporation, but they're given the same equality in a way, you know? And so it's like we're bought out as a country. And honestly, I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for a legacy. So like for me, I find how I'm going to like work into this space. It's going to be for the long term, like a vision of like, what are people going to say 80 years from now, 100 years from now? Will my name even be mentioned? Yeah. And so that's how I look at things, is the legacy point of view. And I don't even care about the money. Like I said, if it ever comes down to where I'm getting extorted, blackmailed, or if like I feel like I can't be myself, then I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather just not do it. But like I figured, I even told myself in the beginning, I'd rather try and say I tried my best than to just not do anything about it. Because I love this country so much that it kills me to see what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I know I've studied enough history. I know enough about this country, and I've lived here my whole life to know what it really is and the beauty of it and why it exists.
Yeah.
Because it's for a reason. Like, we were getting rid of the monarchies and the ruling class, and it turned out like through manipulation over time, like it's still we're being ruled by like the upper class, the wealthy.
Yeah.
But it's like when you realize that people here have a lot more power than they realize. It's crazy, because we have phones in our pockets that have AI now, that all the information in the world right at your fingertips, but people don't use it right.
I was going to say, yeah, it comes down to, will we use it, right? Because that is one of the, you mentioned earlier, right? Like our founding fathers, they didn't want us to be taken care of. They wanted us to have the ability to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
So now imagine you're born into this society where you do have autonomy and you can choose to be a plumber or a salesperson or a tattoo artist, whatever. But guess what? You do have to pick something and work and contribute. You cannot just sit there and say, give me handouts. I expect this. I deserve that.
Yes.
That is that, I always talk about socialism, communism, Marxism, however you want to phrase it, right? It remanifests itself every few decades in certain societies, right? And I always remind people, it's not a top-down phenomena. There's a lot of aspects that are top-down, but it's also bottom-up. And when you have enough people out there who say, well, why the hell would I work? Like, I can literally just accept unemployment and get paid about the same amount as if I was working 40 hours a week. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And then you get this kind of entitlement, victim mentality. And then it's like, well, damn, I'm now 40 years old and I'm poor and I don't have shit and I'm overweight.
Yes.
And well, that's not my fault. It's because of the wealthy guys over there. They're the reasons that I'm fat and that I'm poor. So let me elect the guy who's going to take stuff from them and give it to me. And then you have these like snake politicians who come in and they run off of Marxist revolution rhetoric saying like, no, all the suffering around here is just because the wealthy dude over there took it from you. And you wouldn't be poor if he didn't take it from you. So let's go take it back from them. Yeah, let's do it. Boom, communist revolution.
Yeah, and not to mention that these same people that are like the leaders are the rich ones too.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, we're going to go get these rich people here. Don't pay attention to me. Don't worry about what I'm doing, but we're going to get them. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
I watched just this funny comment on that. So I saw at the DNC convention.
One of the billionaires.
It was like Oprah was on there. And it's like, Oprah's, a billionaire basically, but she's still over here waving, her fist in the air, talking about how she's oppressed and she's a victim. And if only the wealthy people wouldn't stop exploiting everyone else. It's like, come on, how are we supposed to believe that here? You
Yeah,
know, it just
yeah.
it just seems
Isn't
fake.
it crazy?
Yeah,
It's like
virtue
theater.
signaling. You know.
It's a theater. It's all a play. It's all a show.
Yeah.
Just to get their agenda pushed, and each faction, each side has their own groups of people and ideas that they're trying to push.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to the central theme of accountability, even on the individual scale. You know, you're big on philosophy myself as well, and so here's one thing I used to think. So it's a saying. I'm definitely going to paraphrase it. You know, one day I woke up wanting to change the world. The next day I went to bed knowing I got to change myself. You know, and that's how it has to come down. Like if I want to do more, I have to focus on myself. I have to, you know, take accountability for where I am in life, analyze it, realize, all right, so this is what it is. See it for what it is, not for worse than what it is, but for what it actually is, and then improve from there. And I got to work on myself so I could give more and be more.
You got to
for
get your
others.
own house in order before you go off and try to change the world.
Yeah,
right?
they say like in airplane, if the mask come down, you got to put your mask on first before you can help someone else out. And that's how if each person was like that, where they put their own mask on first, took care of themselves, you wouldn't like. There's a philosopher, Jim Rohn. He passed away recently in the 90s, but he's really good. He's like, I'll take care of me for you if you take care of you for me. And so that's it. It's a matter of each person taking care of themselves. Like I know when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to government. I grew up not having a lot, but I'm not going to say I was like the poor bottom of the bottom, but I know what it's like where it's like, you're towards the bottom. My mom hates every time I say that though, so I don't want to even talk about it. But, it's like basically I know some people that they're on government assistance. This happened to a friend of mine. He was on food stamps. He has a bunch of kids, and he went to like a store and he used his card. By the time he got home, there was a skimmer on that card, and it took all the money off the card. So the next day he wants to go get some food. He doesn't have any money on there. And then he's all like panicking because he's like, what am I going to do? I can't feed my kids for the rest of the month. And I'm like, oh man, like that's a crazy situation to be in where, I mean, the guy's like 26, 27, but it's like you're in a situation where now like the government's feeding you, but something like this, somebody stole it all and you can't feed your kids for the month. What are you going to do? You're going to go to these shelters or the churches, try to feed your kids. And that's a crazy situation to be in, and for me, I've always been on the side of trying to teach people to be independent.
Yeah.
And my philosophy has always been, I'd rather starve in the jungle than eat in a cage, because I know that there's no guarantees in the jungle. But at least I know I'm free to do it. I'm free to go out and eat anytime I want. And it doesn't get easier. You just get better, right? So if you just keep getting better at this, then before you know it, you're going to be good. No matter what the economy is doing, you make your own economy. Yeah. And I've been in sales, so when it comes down to sales, you eat what you kill. But the more you get better at it, the easier it gets. And before you know it, you don't even need the government for anything. You just live your life however you want. And I just want people to have that freedom of knowing, like, I could feed my family anytime. I don't have to wait for someone. I don't have to panic, rely on somebody's charity or good deeds to help feed me and my family. I could do that on my own, because going back to it, I just wanted the opportunity.
Yeah.
I didn't want the guarantee. Give me the opportunity, and then I'll take care of the rest.
Yeah.
And that's what we need, that independent spirit to populate throughout the country. I just think we have to have it spread more. Yeah. It's just a mindset.
It is. It's definitely a mindset and a philosophy. Some argue a theology, right? Because that's you have a assumption on how the world works, and I agree with that assumption. Where it's like, hey, you should be learning how to take care of yourself, and that's actually the best way that everything operates, right? Like, how can you have a wife and kids if you don't have your own shit together, right? So you are someone who believes in autonomy and sovereignty of the individual, right? Versus like, being a part of a group. So I always thought that, and it makes sense, like people who have that kind of underlying philosophy, theology, however you want to call it, it ends up impacting how they view politics, right? Because that's kind of the next layer up. Yeah. And a lot of folks argue that, I'm big on talking about Marxism and socialism and all that. And a lot of people argue that Marxism is actually a religion, because it has a different assumption on what the meaning of life is, right? They argue, Karl Marx argued that humans, would be free if you weren't chained down by society. So the only reason that you don't feel happy or that you're suffering is because society is actually impacting you. It's not the own decisions that you've made. You would be happy if we could all just get, a monthly paycheck and go do poetry. It's like this crazy utopian thinking, in my view. But some people have really adopted that theology. And then for me, that's where, take Marxism as a theology, it starts to make sense why they vote for open borders, right? Because they believe that, okay, well, they operate off the victim hierarchy. It's like, okay, well, poor guy in Venezuela is more of a victim than poor guy in America. So therefore, we prioritize the poor guy in Venezuela, right? So it's all of this, or even the entitlements, right? Well, we shouldn't have to work. Why would I have to work? I was born into this society. So it's this crazy theology that impacts the policies that they make later. And I think, in my view, and I'm 27 now. When I graduated college, I was definitely more egotistical and, thought that life was all about adhering to your immediate whims, which is exciting in the moment and then very destructive long term. So I've gone through my own transition like every human does. We all continue to grow. But I had to really go backwards and start to think like, what do I think life is about? Do I think life has no meaning and it's completely pointless and we're just atomized individuals? Like I'm not, I'm pretty secular. I'm not a religious person, but no, I do believe that life is about reducing suffering, right? Yeah. Whether that is, us making our own decisions and all that, or trying to help make the world a better place. But I have that underlying philosophy and worldview that now I can go out and start having conversations about what we want our society to look like and what policies I believe will yield better outcomes versus worse outcomes,
Yes, absolutely. And, I like how you mentioned that. A lot of times people will look at, the suffering in one person dealing in this country is worse than, suffering in our country. But it goes back to the other theme, which is we're all Americans. So we're focused on our country.
Should be America first.
It's always should be America first because this is where we are.
Yeah, just like Mexicans should think Mexico first.
Yes.
Venezuelans should think Venezuela first.
Yes. Each country should have that pride in where they are from and where they're at currently. Instead of trying to just flee. I understand there might be reasons to flee. You might be in danger, stuff like that. And by all means, you got to do what you got to do for yourself and your family. But in our country, I feel like we should prioritize American citizens. I feel like American citizens now, it's not even about racism, though. It's about classism. And I honestly think that's what it always was about. But you let certain people tell it, it's always racism. Because racism was used to divide people. And so with classism, though, it's the wealthy versus the poor. Right? And so I feel like the poor in this country are really being exploited and taken advantage of because all of a sudden we find a lot of money that comes out of nowhere to help other people from other countries, and then they'll come here, whether they're poor, they work their way up. And that's a great thing by all means, being more valuable to society. But in reality, though, we have tons of American citizens, even veterans and people that have just mental issues that we need to help build them up, or at least help our lower realms of society so that we can build everyone up. Because if everybody's doing good, then overall we're going to be good. Because then even it impacts everything. It's like the butterfly effect. Like if you're a wealthy person and you're driving through nice neighborhoods, but you see people that are mentally ill and they're on the corner. I look at like Point Loma is a beautiful place, but there's a lot of mentally ill people walking around. But there's also a lot of wealthy people there too, and it's like that doesn't help. To that you're driving your nice car past this person pushing a grocery cart, and so it's like if we're able to help everybody, like at least Americans that are building each other up, well then now you could drive through your neighborhoods and not have to worry about, under the 5 freeways seeing a whole homeless encampment, because we're helping these people get out of their situations and overall it's making it better for everyone. But that's the thing. It's like a lot of people play the zero-sum game where I have to win and my win means you lose, or you winning means I lose. One
or the other, huh?
There's no win-win situations. It's always a win-lose. And that's where there's solutions that we can have if you think outside the box. Like even like I was saying with the checkbox of, do you want to know if your child's transitioning or something? Just one simple question in a checkbox. It's not like a zero-sum in the fact of now I lost my rights or something. No, it's, if you want, you can opt in for this or you can opt out. That's your choice. But we're not forcing anything on you. We're not forcing you to do it or forcing you not to do anything, but we're giving you the option. Yeah. Why don't we have more solutions that can be more geared towards a win-win situation rather than the zero sum? I feel like that's really politically driven. Yeah. Everybody wants to feel like my point is right. That's it. Instead of just taking a step back and say, all right, so how can we all win? How can we all benefit from this?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and that's a big, I always reference Thomas Sowell, but one of his famous quotes is, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. So it's like, there was always going to be pros and cons to every decision, right? So it's like, hey, you want to open the border? Yeah, there's some, poor families out there in other countries who can come through and very likely make a better life for themselves. That is a pro, right? But what are the cons, right? The cons are, you now have cartels and, illegal organizations taking advantage of that and making billions of dollars at the expense of young humans who are being sold for sex slavery, fentanyl deaths all across America, let alone cartel violence among one another. Like, okay, there's more cons than pros in that decision. I personally, that's why I vote for having regulated immigration, right? But it's that philosophy of money doesn't grow on trees. We would love to help everyone and have a utopia that doesn't exist today. So now let's get back to reality and start, debating what will be the pros and cons outcomes of this policy that we make. Have we seen it be passed in other states and other countries, right?
I'm glad that you said it as well, like debating, because I feel like too many times, especially now, it seems like there's no talking anymore. They're just trying to mute you, silence you, cancel you for anything that you want to say. There's a Assembly member, Bill Asaley, where he was trying to pass certain laws. I believe it was a law on protecting the kids, like trying to, make it more harsh for people trying to, extort children. And they muted his mic while he was in the middle on the floor.
Wow.
They muted his mic.
Is a local guy?
He's in he's like North County.
Okay.
So he has his own district that he
yeah.
represents, but still, like, each of them, he represents thousands of people though. And for them to mute his microphone midway, and he's making as much noise as possible, but that's what it goes to show. They're trying to silence people.
Yep.
And that's not healthy in our government, because we need to have opposing views. It's not one party rule. It's not just because you don't like what I'm saying, you could just mute my microphone.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to speak up because I got thousands of people that are counting on me, that voted for me to say this to you. And that's where we have to have more common ground. We're all Americans here. Just because I don't like what you're saying, you have the right to say it. And especially if you're an elected official representing 10,000, 20,000 plus people, I know it's more than 10, 20,000, but still, like, you have a lot of people that you're representing. You have a voice. You should be able to say something. And so that's where we have to really get more rooted into, like, the debates, having open floor conversations, because that's what's going to push our country forward. And it can't be a one party rule, where I'm actually worried about right now. And all right, so yes, I'm running under the Republican ticket, and I see it like this right now. And especially in our party, a lot of people are following Trump all the way over the cliff. He's going to drive him over the cliff right now. And that's dangerous, because then you got Kamala Harris, who's just going to walk her way right into the office. But here's the thing. If everybody in our party is just following who's the leader, because if Trump is the only leader, then we're in trouble. Because then what else is the party going to do? If he goes down, then everybody's going to go down with him, right? Yeah. And then what's going to happen? Democrat Party is going to just take over. We already have a Democrat supermajority in California, and you see what's happening. That's dangerous to have a supermajority of Democrats, because
supermajority of anyone,
even Republicans, supermajority of anyone. We have a government, even though it's two main parties, it's the fact that there's not everybody's on the same page. We have, all right, we're all going down this one path. And then you have another party say, are we even going the right way? We have to have that. Somebody put that opposition in there just so it's not a bunch of yes men on your team.
Exactly.
And
that's really that's why I started this podcast, right? Because I'm Joe Schmo citizen, right? Who I got my own responsibilities. I have my own problems, but I would love to see our society move towards a better direction, right? And one of the things when I started to, try to figure out what issues I cared about and topics that I like to talk about, philosophy, psychology, history, all that good stuff, one of the things I noticed was really that tribal echo chamber, right? You have your hardcore MAGA Republicans who, I don't care what Trump does, I will vote for him either way. And then you have your hardcore, Biden is for the people, type of, folks. And this is another consequence of social media, right? Because on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever, you are in your own little algorithm, and they just feed you stuff that you want. And guess what? If I come across a 30-second clip of, Bill Maher, and he's saying something that maybe I don't agree with, I can just choose to not see any more Bill Maher, right? I personally like Bill Maher because, and this is my second point, Bill Maher and other old school liberals, I'll call them, actually speak their mind. They're not just repeating what their party and team says. Like they do challenge the rest of the Democrats on the child, policies and supporting Hamas. And it's like, what the hell? Like, hey, I'm a, Bill Maher's like, hey, I'm a Democrat and, consider myself a leftist, but I don't agree with all this crap. Like, I don't think we should yell gas the Jews and
that's crazy.
It's insanity. So it's like, for me personally, someone who 13 months ago, couldn't tell you what a Democrat or Republican was, diving into this world, I wanted to see who actually had the balls to go out there and talk and have a free, open dialogue, sit for podcasts, right? I think that's why people love Joe Rogan's podcast, because people come on there for 2 hours. It's hard to bullshit for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And me personally, this is my own personal experience now, why I prefer the Republican Party right now. I see more of those folks and more conservatives willing to go on leftist media and actually talk and argue their points. Vivek Ramaswamy, love the guy, big fan of his. He would go right on CNN, MSNBC, and just argue his points and had nothing to hide about it. He wasn't bullshitting. He didn't have some secret agenda, right?
Yeah.
Why don't I personally see more leftists going on Fox to argue their point, right? Like, hey, RFK was on there all the time. I liked RFK. I thought he was pretty cool. Bill Maher goes on Fox News and shares his points and talks about that. To me, that's more genuine. Even if I disagree with what you're saying, you're not out here just parroting what your tribe says. Like, you are a free individual thinker. Even if I don't agree with you, that's what I like and who I support, right? And I just don't see a lot of that from the Democrats. Like, even Todd Gloria, like, when's the last time this dude sat on a podcast, or even, the opposing side's news and actually just sat there and answered questions, right? Like, Kamala Harris has been running for 33 days now and hasn't done a single interview, right? That hasn't been completely scripted and staged. So if I'm an outsider, nonpartisan, coming in and trying to determine who I want to vote for and support, I don't trust what I'm seeing from the Democrats. You know what I mean? And like, that's why I made this decision to consider myself Republican and vote Republican. And I do believe in a lot of the conservative philosophy, don't get me wrong, but even if I didn't, who's out there willing to debate their ideas? And it's not just a bloodbath of fighting with one another. And I'm not saying we need more of that, but podcasts, right? Sit there. You're like, that's why I respect you and why I was excited to talk to you. It's like, hey, you're running for a local position. You're willing to sit here and talk for a couple hours and actually share your opinion. You don't strike me as someone who's hiding something, or you're just out there trying to like tell me that I'm wrong for these views and here's what I should be thinking.
Exactly. And I really admire the fact that you're doing this, the long form content, because you're right. You can't BS this for a long conversation. You can only BS a couple of points for a news press and then you leave.
Little TikTok clip.
Yeah, that's all, like the little sizzle reels. But when you're actually having the dialogues, that's where building happens. That's where we come up with ideas, solutions. Not enough people are willing to sit and talk about these ideas for a long time, or even just, I don't know, whatever it is, people, I couldn't tell you. I'm just, like I said, I'm an outsider when it comes to the political realm. They didn't invite me to the table. I was the last, I guarantee, I could promise, I was the last person that anybody would have ever thought would be running for government, especially in this area. So it's like, I could even say for myself, being a first timer in this, it's been very difficult because even I'm not endorsed by even my own party or even anybody. I'm like I got endorsed by like the gun organizations, which it's because they're pro Second Amendment, and I believe in that. And why would you take somebody's guns away? Because what you're doing is you're impacting the law-abiding citizens, not the criminals. Criminals are going to get a gun anyways, and what you're going to do is make a law harsher for people that want to protect their families, so stuff like that. I'm all for freedoms, and I think the Second Amendment is uniquely American. And even just a tad to speak on that is what's happening in the UK right now. I don't know if you're following that, but it's pretty crazy.
Basically getting in trouble for tweeting or saying something that the government didn't agree with on social media.
They're going to come up and round you up. You know that they even said they're going to try to come after Americans?
That's insane.
For posting on social media.
Wow.
We had a whole revolutionary war against the English because of this.
Yeah.
Not because of it, but, because they're trying to do too much over here. This is a whole different country now, And it's just like, we have to be able to protect ourselves. I got a story too. I was talking to people. I do a lot of door knocking. I do a lot of talking talking to people in the community.
Yeah.
And one of the people that are in my constituency, they used to live down by the border. And so they were telling me stories about how people would come in like hoodies, backpacks, and there were a lot of them drug smugglers. And one time he had his daughter that was playing in the backyard. She heard some voices. She screams in, "Hey, Daddy, I hear people in the backyard." And he's looking. He has his lights on, but he couldn't really see well. So he got his like shotgun and he's sitting there waiting. He called the cops. Cops didn't come for like 45 minutes. So that is a whole problem, because if something were to happen, it's going to happen right then and there. By the time the cops come, you got to protect yourself, because 15 minutes could be a life or death situation.
Yeah.
But he was lucky nothing happened to him. But then so the cops come and he was telling them situation where they were at. They couldn't do much about it. But then like he was telling them, I grabbed my gun to make sure I protected, my daughter and my family, just in case they were going to come in the house. That he was telling me the cops were more interested in his gun than they were about pursuing who the people were in his backyard, running through.
Wow.
And so it just goes to show, like, wow, we really have our priorities in the wrong place. Like,
Exactly.
This guy's here to protect himself. That's a good thing, and so I just look at it like we got to go back to this whole thing of have your own freedom to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you can't protect yourself, then who will? The government's not here to save you. Politicians are not here to save you. You have to save yourself.
Yeah.
You have to. That's something that I'm always going to go back to, that couple of these themes that you're noticing here, but it just comes down to it. And being that political outsider, though, I'm always going to have like a different perspective. I even think, like, even down the long term, if I say I win this one and win a couple more, I'll always have that perspective of knowing, like, all right, I'm an average person. I don't have an ego where I think I'm better than somebody else, where I think I'm too good for this or that. I'm the person, I'll do it all. I worked at a gym. I was like the maintenance manager, cleaning up. Like, I'll treat the janitor the same as the CEO type of person.
Well, you're a man with principles, right? You're not just coming in to echo, like I said, what the tribe or what the group is saying. Like, you will disagree with your crew if you have a disagreement, right?
Yeah.
And you're starting with those principles.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I know we briefly chatted about this last week. So when you first, I believe you used to consider yourself a Democrat, and then at some point you decided to transition to Republican. Like, what went through that thought process, and how did that experience even happen?
That was, I'm glad you're good at these questions. That was a good one. So I would say this: I did vote for Obama. I even voted for him twice, and I was always a Democrat forever. I always, it was just a thing,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a couple of things, actually. There's a couple of things, like the election with Hillary. I didn't like how that election went down, because I feel like she really like took it from Bernie. I thought Bernie Sanders was going to be the main one, and it was just weird, because I was like, all right, these super delegates, one person is like 1,000 votes. How does that even work, or something like that? And then I felt like she kind of really stole the election from him, and that was a little weird. And then obviously Trump was going to win, because they had the whole emails thing and all this other stuff. But I just felt like the Democratic Party was being very shady with that. That was like my first, like, the chip in the armor, like, oh man, let me really sit back and analyze what they're really doing.
And you consider, or you voted Obama. Was there a reason for that, or like, was there aspects of him that you liked over
McCain and Romney?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Obama was a black guy. I'm like, wow, it actually put me in perspective of like, wow, I could actually do this. Yeah. It made me feel like I could do this. Like, it really was like a hope. I ran 08 for hope. And I was like, wow, this is a crazy moment. Even though, I didn't really know the guy, didn't know anything about him, but the fact is, like, he at least sort of resembled what I look like. And I was like, wow.
Made you feel like you could reach the top and become president. And
yes.
I think a lot of people respected Obama because of that, for sure.
Yes. And I know it wasn't easy regardless of, especially with his name, the way it is. So it's like, it gave me that inspiration and motivation. So I don't know Obama, but I always have the utmost respect. I mean, the guy played basketball with Michael Jordan too. I was like, this is so cool to have a president like that. And so that was great. But then, like, after he left, then the illusion really started to fade, because then I feel like they forced Hillary into that ballot. And that's where it all went downhill for me. And then even after that, it was just, I started looking at what are they doing. I noticed that, like, a lot of the Democrats would be more towards the whole, like, pushing like the gender ideologies on kids, and I was dead set against it. And then I started realizing, like, all right, so they're more for giving out all this money, like this reckless spending that we're doing, and it's just not something I was for. I used to watch C-SPAN a lot. I was the kind of person who watched all this like long form because I don't want to watch the little 30-second TikToks. I want to see what's going on. And there was even times where I would like watch Rand Paul like randomly, but he would always do this thing where addressing about all the waste that we're doing. Like we spent $100,000 to know if robots could snap their fingers, or we spent like 250,000 on the mating cycles of like crickets or something, something stupid, but it's like we're wasting all this money here. And so we have to have this accountability. And that's what I started realizing. And then getting into the actual running for office, I'm looking at, all right, California is a super majority of Democrat. So obviously there'd be a lot of pressures to follow along with the agenda that they have. Like if you're going to push back against it, well, it'd be easier to replace you than it would be to try to get you on their side. And I already noticed that this is what would happen. Like if I'm not on board with them, they're going to direct the resources to whoever they want to push and just cut me out. That's because I don't fit into the mold.
What they want you to parrot.
If you don't stick to the script, they're going to replace you.
Yeah.
And that's what it's very wild. I said that was going to happen. And then I ended up talking to some people, and I can't put people's names out there, but there's a person that's well respected in the community. And I had talked to an attorney about this, but telling them I was going to run. They're like, you got to talk to this guy. It's like your rite of passage. If you're going to run for office, you got to meet him. And he's like a leader, has a lot, like he does events, and he has a lot of like followers. And he even brags about, if I tell somebody something, they're going to the voting polls and they're going to vote, And so, I was trying to meet the person at an event. And so I go up, I finally get to talk to him. I called his office for like a month and a half, maybe 2 months before. And they're like, oh, hey, you can meet him at this event. Get to the event. And I waited, because after the event, you get to wait and talk to him, but there's a line usually. So I told him, I was like, hey, I'm running for office. I'd love to talk to you more. You really get more support, get ideas, share. I'd love to debate and just talk about ideas. And so he told me, he's like, hey, here's my card. We'll talk. Just don't tell anybody you're running for office. I was like, all right, cool. It was like a little weird. I was like, because I got to door knock and I got to tell everybody I'm running, but don't tell anybody. So then I called him about like a month after. He calls me back and he's like, yeah, I just reminded him like, hey, I met you at this event. I was so excited, that I got a call back. This person, like in my eyes, was like way up there. I had so much respect.
Yeah.
And so basically when I got the call, he was like, yeah, I remember you. You're the little kid with that attitude. He thought I had an attitude because he told me not to tell anybody. I was like, what? That attitude didn't even flash across my mind.
Yeah.
But like I just sat there and listened because I'm the kind of type of person, especially if I respect somebody, I don't care what you say. I'm just happy that you took the time to say it.
Of course.
That's
so humility.
Yeah, and that's honestly what it was. Like you took the time to talk to me. It could be F you. As long as you took the time to say it, I respect it. And so I sat and I listened to him, and I didn't even say a word. Like he even was like, the guy with the attitude and all the stuff. I was like, I wanted to say I didn't have an attitude, but he was still talking. So I just sat and waited. I could even flip the phone upside down and didn't even have to say nothing. But I waited, and I like the whole 5 minutes you just talking. He actually was like this. He's like, oh, you're one of those Cornel West Democrats that are just trying to take votes away from people that are actually trying to do things in the party. And it is along the lines of like, they're going to redirect the resources to make sure I don't win. And I was like, whoa.
So this is on the Democrat side, basically.
Yes, but here's the thing. He thought I was a Democrat.
Got it.
He really thought I was a Democrat. And he's like, you see, you're one of those Cornel West Democrats. But he didn't take the time to even ask me about what my ideas were or even know what party I was representing or anything.
Wow.
He didn't
Judged
even
you
know.
based on the way you looked.
Yeah, just off of that. And,
Yeah.
and he was trying to actually actively get people to not support me on the Democrat side. And I was like, this is crazy. And I wasn't even running Democrat anyways, so it didn't matter. But it was just goes to show like that what I was saying was going to happen had actually happened.
Yeah.
But if like I was running Republican, so it doesn't matter what they were trying to do because I didn't need those votes anyways. But I mean, you need all votes. But it was just like one of those, like I just knew like how the Democrats were going to approach this, and it just happened. And the fact that I predicted it and saw it happen, it's almost like a chess game. It's like, man, like
definitely
I
eye-opening.
saw this. It really was. And I was like, it really confirmed like I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like I was like, all right, I'm glad I didn't run under the Democrat ticket, because they would have did that. And in the primaries too, it's like I had my opponent and I had other people that were also running for office, and they were running under a Democrat ticket. Most people do. And I don't know how, whatever they had for their situation set up, but they lost by a landslide, and my opponent, who's the incumbent, took most of the Democrat votes, which is obvious, but it's like, it just goes to show like they have their people that they want. And if they're going to push, they're going to give millions of dollars to my opponent.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just how it is. That's the party. And honestly, I'm against money in politics, because I don't think that it's right. Because now you're poisoning the whole integrity of our elections.
Oh yeah, you're inserting
everything.
other incentives and agendas and motives, right?
Yeah.
That aren't necessarily what the people have spoken among themselves and gone to their elected official to communicate. It's just, where does the money come in? Okay, I will push those policies. F the people.
And most of the times, this is stuff that I'm learning after the fact, right? Most times when politicians are elected, they spend about 70% of their time calling for donations to raise money. That's what they do most of the time. For me, I understand the importance of raising money. By all means, I definitely understand it. And I definitely got to raise more money myself. But what I would do is I would spend more time dedicated to doing things. Let my actions speak. And then the people will see what I've done after my term. And then when I'm campaigning, I'll say, look at what I did. And that right there would be more than enough proof, because too many times we have politicians that are elected, they'll spend 70% of their time just on the phones, calling to try to raise money. And election time, they say, hey, I'm here to fix this, and this, but they don't actually fix it.
Yeah.
They don't want to cure things. They just want to treat it, because it's more profitable for the treatment than the cure.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a boogeyman to talk about, well then, how are you going to get people motivated to go out and vote for you?
Yeah.
For me though, I don't care. I'd rather fix the problem. And if I fix the problem, you don't have to talk about it no more. You're not worried or scared about it, and you feel somebody else is better, by all means. But just remember who was the one that fixed that problem.
Yeah.
That's
And so you won the primaries for the Republican side. Your opponent is the incumbent for the current position.
Correct.
How would you summarize the differences between your, intentions and his or her intentions?
Well, I could say this as well. So in California, it's a jungle primary, which means top two vote getters, period. It's not even about this party. It could be two Democrats if they get the most votes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They just did it this year. So yeah, it was very interesting. And so it's not even about this party's top representative versus this, because if two Democrats beat out the Republican for the top votes, well, then they both go off to the primary or the general election. Yeah. But how I would say is like this. My opponent's been incumbent for about 8 years, let's say. She was 6 years as state assembly, 2 years as city council. But what has she really done? I talk to people. I talk to everybody. The Democrats don't even like her. And it's an opponent. Her name is Tasha. They don't even like her. I talk to Democrat tables just to get ideas, because you're saying like a lot of Republicans are willing to talk to Democrats, but it's never the other way around. But I go there just to hear what they have to say. What are the issues that you care about? Because you're also in my community. You're my constituents. I have to hear your voices. And a lot of them, they care about the environment, same stuff too. Homelessness. They want to fix things. Everybody has these same issues. We're just different ways of how we're going to solve it.
Do people bring up the immigration problem with boats crashing into the beach, or?
Definitely Republicans, not as much for Democrats, but they do care though. They care. They see these things. And I talk to a lot of Democrats as well. It's funny, when I was getting my nomination papers, most of the people that signed for me were Democrats.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's really because if you sit down and you talk to them, we're Americans. That's how I always approach this. I don't approach this as a party. I don't even tell people the party until they ask me.
Yeah.
But like I approach this as being an American, that we're all in the same team here, and they understand it. And a lot of them understand the importance of not having a supermajority run everything. So they say, yeah, we need new voices. We need opposition. And so that they've been supporting me big time for that. And I know that a lot of the votes that I got from my primaries weren't all just Republicans. I know that I had a lot of Democrats that supported, because I went out and talked to at least a couple thousand of them so far, and there's still more to talk to. But it's like, when it comes down to it, my opponent, I would say she campaigns on a lot of things, but a lot of it seems like it's empty promises. Because, for example, she sits on the military veterans board, like military veteran affairs, but she doesn't go to any of the events that the military puts on. I know that for a fact because I go to those, and she hasn't been there. I was even at the Memorial Day event in Mount Soledad, which is in our district right there in La Jolla. Todd Gloria was there. The city councilman, Joe LaCava, was there. Even Scott Peters showed up, the county assessor, all these big names. Everybody was there except my opponent. Why is that?
Her loss, right? She's not engaging with the community and earning their respect. That's unfortunate.
But she's already a comfortable name that's been in so long.
Yeah.
But it's like, how are you so comfortable to not do your job, to not show up? Your job is showing up. Yeah. Show that you care. You know, and what about during the rainstorms? You know, there's like the rain bombs or rain, whatever it is.
Yeah, was that when all the homes were flooding? Or?
Yeah, homes were flooding. She didn't even pretend to take photo ops. Didn't even pop out. All I got was like one email of like the resources that you could go to. But what are you actually doing? What are the solutions? People need to look to leadership for plans, but it's like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like
kind of like Kamala Harris a little bit. I mean, again, she hasn't communicated her policies, and she hasn't actually sat there and done debates and conversations. It's like, even if people like her, we don't know what she's thinking. And that seems risky as a citizen, right? Yeah. Like if that person's going to be making decisions and I don't even know what the hell they're thinking, that's not,
I think
in
that
my
what
best
they're
interest.
doing, they're using her because she's vice president and then Biden's already president. So it's almost seems as if it's going to be the way it is now. People don't really like to change.
Yeah.
And so they're like, all right, so if they're going to stick similar to what we're at now, vice president, just president, they think it's going to be the same. But you know what I notice a lot of in a lot of, like, I don't sit and watch like her whole speeches and stuff. I just see like little clips. So I'm not going to pretend to see the whole thing. But I see a lot of like emotional charged things, or even like music, dancing, a lot of like the lights and the flashy stuff, a lot of people twerking.
Yeah, I was going to say, you didn't feel that Megan Thee Stallion helped influence you to switch sides? No,
not at all that twerking and stuff. It just didn't, it wasn't the right look for me. And with Kamala Harris, it's like how would I describe it, where She definitely, I understand the importance of her role, especially being a person of color. I completely understand it. I just think that she's trying a little too much, and it actually backfires. Because one time she invited a bunch of college students or college girls to her house, I think, or something. And she was playing like this artist Sexy Red, which is like ratchet music. And I'm like, you're vice president. Like, this is a high level in the whole country, and you got this going on. And I understand that you're trying to do it for the culture, but are you really in tune with the culture? Like, I've been an audio engineer. I've been in music. I've been hosting so many events. I actually helped push a lot of the culture in my area. It's like different areas. I was in New York. I was running around Connecticut. And so I was involved a lot with the community and with the culture. And I know that a lot of it's what you make of it. Like, each of us contribute to this whole, and I'm big on being artist and philosophy and stuff like that, and I just think that was more of a following the trends type
like
of thing.
Pandering. That's how I see it.
Yeah,
where it's
like
just
a pandering.
Fake pandering, right? So I mean, it would be the same thing if and I don't believe he does this, but it would be the same thing as if Donald Trump just went out and basically was saying, here's why I love Jesus. Here's why I love, right? It's like, okay, do I believe he's a religious person? I'm sure he is. Do I believe that's his entire shtick? And no. So it would just come off as pandering and not really genuine, right?
Exactly. That's perfect. It didn't come off to me as genuine.
Yeah.
Came off to me as you're trying a little too hard for something. Like, nowadays they're trying to get on the interviews with these like influencers and stuff like
Paying, Gen Z influencers to market. Yeah.
This is a crazy time because we have influencers that don't influence you for anything.
Yeah.
Like, these influencers, they could do whatever. It's like, oh, if so-and-so jumped off a bridge, would you? No.
Yeah.
Like, let them,
Yeah, and that's a whole nother problem too, because a lot of these influencers, they don't have anything to offer. Like, hey, maybe they did a bunch of crazy, goofy stuff or said a bunch of radical shit on TikTok, and then people are like, yeah, I like that. And then they have a following. It's like, hey, cool, you have a following now, but am I going to take even like, these financial gurus that you see on TikTok. It's like, okay, this guy's 19 years old. Am I really going to sit here and think that it'd be different if he built a company from the ground up. Then I'd be like, okay, hey, I want to hear what this guy has to say. But if he just said a bunch of outrageous stuff about, we need to take from the rich and give to the poor, it's like, okay, you don't strike me as a credible source. So even if you're telling me to vote for Kamala, I'm not.
Yeah, if it's not like a Ray Dalio, Warren Buffett, or somebody, like, am I really going to listen to them?
Yeah,
those young kids, they're probably living off their parents' money, which is like, oh, I'm a rich influencer now. I'm going to give you financial advice because my parents gave me like 80 grand or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like I can't get with that.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show, like, if you're out of touch, you're going to try to pander. You're going to try to, follow the trends. Right? You're going to ride the wave. But really, you got to be the wave instead of ride the wave.
It's the difference between being genuine and not being genuine. You know what I mean? So so it sounds like, with your opponent, there's some differences in my view. You're someone who's leading by example. You're actually getting out and shaking hands and talking to people of all sides and hearing from them. And I totally agree with that. So what in the next, you were elected as, you won the primaries. Elections are in November. What in the next few months should the viewers be excited about? What would you want to put on people's radar? Anything like that in the next few months?
So what I'm working on is I'm trying to do more video content for people because I think that that's important. Like, people look me up now, you could probably still see me, but you're not going to see as much of what I really want to get out there. Like stuff like this, where we're on video talking about policies and ideas, that's huge. Because you could try to YouTube your elected officials, you won't really find much. You won't, especially in the video content of like, all right, if I'm a voter and I need to get confidence in a person, what's the best way you're going to do it? See what they're saying. What are they saying?
Yeah, what do they think?
Where are you going to find that? Online, right? Or unless you go talk to them in person in like one of these forums, but not many people are putting stuff out online. So that's what I'm working on. My goal, I want to put more content out, and I've been recording and I do video editing, I do graphic design, all that myself. But it's like, for me, I'm always trying to be a perfectionist. So I would have put this out a long time ago, but I look at these videos, I'm like, no, I could have said something better here. I could have did something better there. So I've been holding off a little bit on that and trying to make it perfect. But now we're getting the end of August, September, October, November is like right there, less than 100 days. So I'm going to be putting out a lot more footage, a lot more video content, so you could really see how genuine of a person I am. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and attending a lot more events. I'm going to be doing more public speaking. Right now, I'm in Toastmasters, which is a public speaking organization. I'm actually the president of my club. So
nice.
Yeah.
It's definitely reputable. Group. I know even, I went to San Diego State, but a lot of folks who are trying to get into sales and business, they go to Toastmasters to learn how to present and publicly speak. So I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yes. And so I'm really heavily involved in the communities, but no matter what community I'm in, it doesn't matter where I'm at, I'm always going to be involved in the communities and try to help build people up. And in the case for like Toastmasters, I'm teaching people how to be leaders. And it takes a leader to build a leader. A lot of it comes down to the philosophy. I'm always willing to share philosophy because it's like iron sharpens iron, or a person could sharpen another person. And sometimes how I always look at it is like a certain string of words that when you put them together, it's almost like a lock. Like 1, 2, 5, 8 could have been the combination, but same thing with words. If you string these words in certain combinations, you unlock epiphanies. They're like those aha moments, like, wow, I didn't think of it like that. And that right there could have been that golden nugget to help you in your life, help you get to that next level you want to reach, and stuff like that. That's what I'm planning on bringing a lot more of. I'm just going to flood the internet world with as many videos as I could, and try to really state the argument as to why people should take that chance on me. Because one thing I would say is I'm dedicated to this. And the fact that I'm even here, I truly appreciate, because growing up where I grew up, nobody's doing this. Even in my district, I looked it up, the demographics, 1.3% of the population is even black. So I'm probably like a major part of that. But in the neighborhood that I grew up in, especially, nobody was positive. It was more like one of those, oh, I had a bad day, oh, my day was worse. It's so negative where I was growing up, and there wasn't much to look forward to. I was just happy to reach 21, happy to reach 25, just nothing going on. And so I ended up, the big thing for me, I wasn't a follower. And like, I had my own ideas. I was very motivational my whole life. And I took that, carved my own path, and was able to turn something that I was completely counted out, and by all statistics that you could think of. And I managed to make it out of there. And I'm not rich or famous. I'm not a celebrity, a famous athlete. I'm just an average working person that is living in an amazing place. And so if I could do this, it's literally like, if I could do it, anybody could type of deal.
Yeah.
But it really is. And that's something that I want to be able to portray. I just need a bigger megaphone, I suppose,
Yeah.
to get the message out to more people. And I'm not in it for the views, for the clicks, for the likes. I'm in it to actually make a real change, because I'm in it for the legacy of it all. What are they going to say 10 years, 20 years from now? One thing you're going to say is I wasn't a liar. One thing you're going to say is I worked hard.
You didn't sit on your ass and do nothing about it.
Exactly. Didn't sit around, do nothing.
Yeah.
And the fact that I even got to hear, like, I approached this with so much gratitude and humility to it, that I assure you that there's not going to be anybody in office that I'm working with out of my colleagues that's going to work harder on this than I would. Like, 9 to 5 doesn't even exist in my mind when it comes down to it, because I've been an entrepreneur. I know what it's like. 9 to 5 is just like the typical job thing, but as entrepreneurs, you're 24/7. Anytime you need to get something done, you just do it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my mindset to this. We got to get things done. I'm willing to work as long as I could, as much as I need to get this job done. And that's how I see it. I'm more mission driven. And so you're going to see a lot more of like these messages, these mission driven messages that are going to be here to pull all of us together. And like I said, I'm an outsider on this whole thing, but I have a good feeling that a lot of people are going to be, like, even my opponent, she only won by, technically I say won, we both won, but she only had about 20,000 or 23,000 more votes than me. And she spent way more than I did. I know for sure.
And had a lot less conversations.
Yes, way less conversations. I've spent all my time, even on the weekends, I spend my time just door knocking, traveling. I even got a little motorcycle because it's even easier to get in and out of places.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of my time just talking to people, and that's just something I'm dedicated to. And so like in the next couple of months, next couple of weeks, what you'll see is a lot of that dedication going to come through. I already have like a lot of what I want to say, like, pretty much understood, because I practice it all the time in my Toastmasters.
You've thought through these things. Yeah, I respect
And so it's just a matter of just recording it and putting it out there. But I'm too much of a perfectionist, so it might not be perfect when I put it out there, but at least it'll be something. And then it's more for the voters, to understand, like, here's where I stand on this issue. I tell people I'm willing to fight on this hill, die on this hill. So if it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, and you have issues you care about, I'll fight for you. And there's no problem in proposing the legislation. The big part is you got to get other people on board with you.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm a salesman. I can sell ideas, and so I could sell someone on why it's important that we should. Like, I had somebody message me about they have a boat and expired flares, and there's no proper way to dispose of them, for example. And so I'm like, all right, well, that's an issue. Well, I didn't think about it. I didn't know. I don't have a boat myself.
Yeah.
But issues like that, it's not something I'm going to die on this hill, but I'm going to propose it.
Yeah.
I'll bring something up about it because it's important. What do they do with these? And most people just try to throw them in the garbage or just dump it overboard.
Yeah.
But the stuff like that isn't good. We have to have proper disposal. And so issues like that, I'm going to really fight for. And I really listen to people. And I gave a speech a couple weeks ago, and somebody from the crowd had told me when I had a previous conversation with them at another event, the one thing I said I was going to do is make myself more available. And after I had that conversation with that person, on my website, I even edited availability just to let people know I'm going to be more available.
Yeah.
And then she appreciated that I took that and then actually used it and implemented it on my website, because I hear people.
Yeah, you're listening.
I don't know everything. I know that I don't know everything, but that's why I'm willing to listen, willing to understand, and willing to fight for people.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing you're going to see a lot of. And it's going to, one thing I'm really good at too is I tell people this. I came from the Yo Mama era, like I'm really good at comebacks. Like there's not anything that you're going to say. I'm thick skinned, I'm always a joker. I love laughing and making people laugh. But there's one thing that is going to happen is if we ever have a debate or anything like that, I know I'm going to be ready. I'm gonna be 100% ready. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a debate. I'm trying to get a debate with my opponent.
That's what the people need.
Yeah, that's what they really need.
Yeah.
But too many people try to like stop it because they don't want to give me more attention than I should get or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I like that you're willing to do it, and I think, another takeaway for me there is, especially, you framed it as advice for other people, right? Like you're someone who comes from humble beginnings. You don't have a, $1 million budget to go do this or that, or, all these, groups backing you necessarily, but you are doing it. And guess what? You won the primaries and now you're one of two options that the local people get to vote for. So whether it goes well or doesn't go well, in my view, you've now showed a lot of young men and women that they have the ability to come from humble beginnings and actually do something about it and actually work their own way and take ownership of their own situation to make a better outcome or do big things. So I think that's fantastic, wisdom for young people. I like that you're leading by example. I think maybe a good place to stop. I always like to ask my guests, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of San Diego and then our country and world as a whole?
Yeah. My hopes and dreams for San Diego is that we could really clean up the issue. San Diego's so beautiful. Like the issues is of homelessness, especially, and the economy. If we could lower the cost of living, remove gas taxes and unnecessary taxes, that's important. Like, so making San Diego affordable, that would be my really hope and dream, and getting a lot of the homelessness out of these beautiful areas, because especially the touristy areas, it just makes it look bad. So that, like, getting rid of a lot of the homelessness in the next couple of years, not seeing that, making sure San Diego's affordable, and the litter. If I didn't see as much litter and pollution in San Diego, that would be my ideal vision for it, because I could go anywhere in the world and I always want to come back here. Because the best weather, best everything. You know, this is home, and so that would be my big vision for San Diego. Is like a much cleaner, more affordable place to live, and something great for everybody. You know, a lower crime rate would be good. Even though San Diego is not as bad as a lot of other big cities, but it still has its own little pockets here and there. Yeah,
and those are things we can control, right? And I think there really are a lot of people who were the silent majority and are now starting to speak up, including myself, who are like, hey, I don't want, higher gas prices and grocery prices and crime rates. I want lower, right? Like, I want to be in a better mood more of the time, not a worse mood. But those are decisions, right? And I think a lot of people feel that way. So it's nice to have folks like yourself who are actually running and doing something about it. And I hope that people can look from your situation and journey and experience, and it motivates them to do big things. I hope folks who are on the silent majority can hopefully look after myself and say, hey, I have opinions too, and I'm willing to state them. I'm willing to disagree with this dangerous idea of the state being prioritized over the parents. Like, I as well agree with that. So I'm going to say something about it and not get told I'm a transphobe for thinking that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They want to just label people. Oh, yeah.
So, but I love it, man. And I think, like, one, as a San Diego guy, born and raised, I always appreciate people who are willing to be selfless and actually do take their own time and make their own sacrifices to improve the community. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate you. As an American man, I appreciate hey, we have two different skin colors, yet you and I look at it the same way. We don't look at skin color. We look at, hey, we're American. You and I have more in common than people outside these borders, right? And in other cultures. So I think that that's the right way to look at it. And I think that us even having this conversation, and look, we had some technical issues. Not everything was perfect, right? But we're willing to have an open dialogue, and we got nothing to hide. So I hope more people can take that away from this conversation. I think people already are, right, with you and your journey and your experiences. So I thank you as an American. I appreciate you offering, being vulnerable and offering your time and wisdom to anyone who's watching. And I appreciate that you're also willing to have debates and actually talk to the people. And even if you disagree with them, you're willing to communicate that and actually put yourself out there. So I respect everything you're doing, my friend.
Thank you, man. Truly appreciate you. Appreciate you for the platform and the opportunity to come up here and talk.
Of course, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, and best of luck in November. I'll share any of your links and website on the bio of the video, but
thank you.
Some social media posts will come out as well. But I wish you the best of luck, and I'll definitely be paying attention.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Awesome, brother.
All right.
Sweet.
Sometimes